Hi, Dr. Matthew Weiner from Commerce, Michigan, author of A Pound to Cure. I'm a bariatric surgeon. I'm here to talk to you about a slightly different way that I recommend my bariatric surgery patients eat. I recommend that you eat your vegetables first. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why we make some of the recommendations we do, and I'm going to present a second way that I think is very healthy and promotes weight loss, and in fact is preferred by a lot of bariatric surgery patients. So before we get started, we should ask ourselves, where does this recommendation of eating your protein first come from? And to understand that, you have to look back about 10 or 20 years. 10 or 20 years ago, when bariatric surgery was in its infancy, we would consistently make the operations very malabsorptive, meaning that there would be a long limb of intestine that wouldn't be able to absorb the food, and you'd have only a short segment of the intestine to absorb it. In these situations, malnutrition was a constant threat. Protein malnutrition is a very, very severe problem, and if you do develop it, it can be difficult to reverse and is a major issue. And so we started off, when we did these operations, recommending that patients eat their protein first and counseling them on techniques for eating that would prevent malnutrition and prevent vitamin deficiencies. Since these times, we've ended up making the operations much less malabsorptive, so that most surgeons perform a gastric bypass with around 2/3 of the intestine left to absorb normally. In fact, we don't see much malabsorption, and aside from some iron deficiency that I've talked about in other videos, we really don't see a lot of severe vitamin deficiencies that cause problems the way we did earlier. Now, this of course is not including the duodenal switch operation, which I personally don't perform, and I would not encourage any duodenal switch patients to adopt this methodology. But for gastric bypass and sleeve gastrectomy patients, I think this is an excellent technique for weight loss. And so I'm going to present an alternative to our traditional eat your protein first model. And that is, of course, is to eat your vegetables first. So if we take a look at what patients are going to be eating who are eating according to the protein first model, they're going to eat a decent amount of meat, and meat includes beef and pork and chicken and other poultry and fish and seafood. They'll eat oftentimes large amounts of dairy products and cheese, obviously a dairy product. There's typically an emphasis in the protein first diet on limiting portions and on limiting the number of calories that you take in. And we look at fruits and vegetables as truly optional. You can eat them, you can't. We almost look at them as an empty calorie, something that's not going to really make much of a difference one way or the other in your success. Again, we emphasize portion control, and this is all designed to prevent malnutrition, to prevent protein malnutrition specifically, so that patients aren't wasting away after surgery. But in the modern era of bariatric surgery, we are not seeing patients dying of malnutrition. For every one patient I have who is at too low of a weight where we're counseling on increasing their calorie intake or increasing their nutritional demands, I probably have 50 to 100 who are worrying about not losing enough weight. And that is clearly our major issue. Our major issues with these surgeries these days are weight regain and failure to lose enough weight to make a big difference. And so for that reason, I've adopted a vegetable first approach to my patients. And although I typically don't emphasize this until around 3 months out from surgery, you can still implement some techniques of it, and I do in some of the other videos, in those first 3 months. But for patients 3 months out and further, I emphasize a protein first model. I recommend that patients eat fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds and beans, lots of them, as much as they'll tolerate. And these foods, especially in the first year after surgery, are very comfortable to eat, where my patients often find that animal protein is very difficult to eat. The vegetable first model emphasizes the nutritional content of foods as opposed to the calorie content of foods. And I believe that by eating all of these plant-based foods, that you're going to receive large amounts of phytonutrients, which are going to help our metabolic thermostat shift our weight to a lower level. It's going to provide a lot of nutrition and prevent some of the malnutrition conditions that we are worried about. I think fruits and vegetables should be the backbone of your diet. And instead of emphasizing the quantity of food, I emphasize the quality of food. I'm much less concerned with how much food my patients are taking in, and much more concerned with what types of food choices they're making. What happens with everybody who undergoes bariatric surgery is that the amount of restriction, or the size of food or amount of food you can eat, will change and will increase year after year to about 4 or 5 years, to the point where you can eat somewhere between a half and 2/3 of what a person with a normal adult stomach can eat. And so again, my emphasis is on avoiding weight regain, and so by eliminating a lot of the animal proteins and processed foods and the processed carbohydrate-rich foods, and focusing on fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, and beans, we can help to prevent weight regain. When you look at the types of foods that patients are choosing, in the protein-first model, we have cottage cheese, often store-bought yogurt, whole wheat toast, coffee with cream, lots of artificial sweeteners I find in post-surgical patients following this plan. A lot of emphasis on portion-controlled meals like lean cuisine or smart balance or the small Weight Watchers meals. Chicken, potatoes, some vegetables, but again, the vegetables tend to be de-emphasized. Lots of liquids with artificial sweeteners, Crystal Lights, diet soft drinks, sugar-free popsicles, lots of low-fat dairy desserts, and of course I've left out the protein shakes, which tend to be the backbone of these patients' diets, which are loaded with artificial sweetener, which have a processed protein in them, and really don't do a lot, in my mind, to add to the nutritional content of someone's diet. If you want to add to the nutritional content of someone's diet, you add fruits and vegetables into their food. If you look at what the vegetable-first patients are drinking, they're drinking what I recommend are what I call set point smoothies, or green smoothies. They're a smoothie made with large amounts of vegetable, leafy greens, primarily either spinach or kale oftentimes, but people use Swiss chard, they use dandelion greens. There's all kinds of options out there. And you mix these green leafy vegetables with some fruit and often a spice like ginger or mint, or something else to add some flavor, with a little bit of ice or water, and you really get a delicious drink that is loaded with nutrition, goes down very smoothly, and it helps to prevent any of the malnutrition complaints that patients will have, such as excess fatigue within the first few months after surgery. I push large salads with a little bit of chicken, shrimp, and some beans in them, with the emphasis being large amounts of vegetable in the salad, with the meat being essentially a condiment or an addition to the salad rather than the backbone. And for dinner, a small portion of chicken, fish, seafood, with a large amount of vegetables, oftentimes cooked. And instead of just kind of steamed broccoli, I encourage my patients to add spices and to try medleys and mixtures and new recipes out to improve and enhance the taste of these vegetables. And so when I approach this problem, I really rely on, I think, some very wise words from one of my personal heroes, Albert Einstein, who said, we can't solve our problems with the same thinking that we use to create them. And so my challenge is that I believe that Americans have largely been focusing their entire diet on protein first. When you ask someone, what was for dinner last night? It's never vegetables. You rarely even answer, well, potatoes. It's, I had chicken, I had fish, I had steak. And so we emphasize the animal protein as the backbone of our diet, and we've always been eating protein first. And perhaps this is part of the reasoning that we've gotten ourselves into this huge obesity crisis in this country. And so what I am presenting to bariatric surgery patients out there is that perhaps there is a better way of eating than focusing on the animal protein. We have to start focusing on the vegetable, start focusing on the fruit, the beans, the nuts, the seeds, and using the animal protein as an additive to the food. This is what many other cultures do. This is a very common cooking technique in the Chinese culture and the Indian culture, and they have much lower rates of obesity than we see in America. They're on the upswing as our fast food restaurants are starting to take hold. But certainly, the majority of people in these countries, we don't see the same degree of obesity that we do here. So this idea that it's about the vegetable as the backbone of the dish works very well after surgery. My patients tell me that these foods are delicious to them, that fruit is delicious to them, and that especially the beans go down very smoothly, are an excellent source of protein. So I think you'll find that after the surgery, as we've shifted your metabolic thermostat, as we've changed your taste preferences and your food cravings, you're going to find that this style of eating is actually very comfortable and works well and is easy to adopt. In that first year after bariatric surgery, you have a tremendous opportunity. You have an opportunity to start from scratch. You have a blank slate. Your food addictions are wiped out. Your cravings are wiped out. And you can start any type of diet you want. And I would urge you to experiment with this way of eating. And what you'll find is as time passes, this is going to become a very natural, normal way for you to eat. And it's going to help prevent weight regain going forward, which is probably your greatest risk. What I do with my patients is I'll slowly ramp up the amount of vegetables you eat. In my book, A Pound of Cure, I emphasize a pound of vegetables daily as a bare minimum and encourage patients to eat 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds a day. When I talk to my post-op patients about that, they look at me like I'm crazy, and we all know that they're not going to be able to eat 1 pound of vegetables. So what happens is, in those first 3 months, I do emphasize more of a protein-first diet because you're eating very small portions during that time period. But I'm still adding a little bit of vegetable in. And then around 3 months, I generally will say to the patient, listen, we all know you're not going to starve to death at this point. You can eat plenty. And they say, of course, yes, I can eat more than enough to stay alive. And so we don't have to focus on the malnutrition element. Instead, we have to focus on the weight maintenance and in maximizing our weight loss and preventing weight regain going forward. And so at that point, I'll start to add vegetables. Now, at 3 months, it may be 3 or 4 ounces of vegetables. It's not going to be a lot that you're able to keep in. But at month 6, you're going to be able to eat more food. And so instead of increasing the portion size of the animal protein, instead of starting to dabble a little bit with some of the processed foods that you ate before surgery, instead of looking at something like a lean cuisine as being an adequate choice for dinner, I would encourage you to add more vegetables into your diet so that extra space, that extra capacity for food that you've developed from month 3 to 6 is filled with vegetable, and so on and so on. And around a year, I find most bariatric surgery patients can consume 1 pound of vegetables a day, along with some healthy animal protein, lots of beans and nuts and seeds, and feel fantastic and really be taking steps that is going to lock in this weight loss that you've achieved and make you very resistant to weight regain going forward. So you do have a choice. On one side here, we've got a protein-first diet, and this is low-fat, low-calorie dairy desserts like ice cream. This is protein shakes. This is the meat and potato standard approach. But I think, and I'm reaching out to you as a physician, letting you know that this is an acceptable option, that you have a choice. You can drink green smoothies instead of protein shakes, especially if you add some nuts or seeds into that smoothie to add a little bit of protein. You can have fruit for dessert. That's a wonderful dessert, and there's so many different ways you can prepare it. You can make ice cream from frozen bananas that is one of the most delicious things you'll ever taste. And you can focus the backbone of your diet on vegetables and use animal protein as an addition and maintain a healthy lifestyle and I believe make yourself much more resistant to weight regain. If you'd like to find out more, you can come to my website. You can check out our Facebook page at A Pound of Cure, or look for more on our YouTube channel. Of course, our book, A Pound of Cure, is available on Amazon. Thank you.